Welcome back to the Zero to Here podcast. Merry Christmas, everyone. It is December 26th. Producer Carl was away for a week in Maui. Carl, you don't look very tanned. What happened?
It's just my skin, man.
He's Polish, that's why. Merry Christmas. I am excited to get back into the studio today and get going with our guest here, who is one of my favorite cousins.
You're just saying that.
I've got a lot of them.
It's hard when there's like 56 of us.
60.
60?
There's 60 grandchildren.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that insane?
It's hard to keep count.
Oh my gosh. I haven't even met some of them.
I know.
Danielle Kettlewell.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm great.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
A little bit about Danielle, and then I'll let her give herself a little intro. But we grew up in the same big crazy family. She's my first cousin. Naturally growing up in a big family with 60 grandchildren. And you are one of five?
Yes.
Right?
Youngest
one of five. You're just kind of built to compete.
Pretty much.
So a lot of our story, or a lot of our conversation today, is going to be around sport. Danielle competed at the 2016 Rio Olympics.
Crazy.
Which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
But I always start with asking my guests to describe themselves in 3 words.
Oh, you are going to do it. Okay. I'm prepared. Okay. So I've thought about this long and hard, and hopefully this is the right answer. But I would say 3 words or phrases.
Yeah.
Thirsty, a passionate life enthusiast, and truster of the universe. Definitely. Those are my 3 describing words.
These are 3 very new ideas that we're going to talk about today. Thirsty, I like it because you've got a full glass of wine in front of you. Why thirsty? Define thirsty.
So I was thinking about it, and I just either like thirsty or curious, but definitely thirsty because I always want to know more. And it's not from a place of being unsatisfied, like I'm really happy where I am, but you can always be better. Mm-hmm. Thirsty and like craving for more knowledge, more growth, whether that be travel or knowing people or having new experiences. Just knowing that the best person I'm going to be in this world is from getting in as much as I can from everything else and not settling for what is. Like you always need to kind of crave and go for more and grow more. So that's, yeah. And I mean, I live in water, so most of the time, synchronized swimmer. So yeah, definitely thirsty is a way I would describe myself, which is something that I never kind of thought until I pondered this question. But if you want to be the best version of yourself, you always need to kind of have that growth mindset of knowing and learning as much as you possibly can to be the best version of yourself.
Can you think back and pick a point or an age of where that mindset kind of started?
I'd say in sport, just definitely growing up in synchronized swimming and always having that. We were always taught to like set our goals and go after our goals and kind of always going after the next big thing and not settling, which also can be a downfall. It's something that I've learned, also learning to enjoy the moment, because I think sometimes we can get so caught up in it and going after our goals that people don't appreciate like what is right now, and then you're never satisfied. But at the end of the day, it's important to know that you could always be better, and you can always be a better version of yourself, be a better version of, be a better athlete, learn more, be more, all of that. And it's definitely woven into my sporting career, and then kind of moved into life. And I, not necessarily academically inclined. I'm not an idiot. I think life is my school, not actual formal education, but just always wanting to know more, whether that be about personal development, whether that be about something random, whether that be through traveling to a different country and having a new experience, whether that be learning a new skill, whatever it is, just always knowing that there's so much more out there than my little world.
One thing I say all the time on the podcast is I'm obsessed with continuous growth personally, professionally.
Definitely.
And so I guess that's something we have in common.
Yeah, because I like the phrase, if you're not growing, you're dying, which kind of sounds like a bit morbid. Yeah. But unless every day you wake up and you at least want to learn one thing from the day, you're kind of going backwards. And think that's the way to move forward to be the best version of yourself.
I learned that through sport, and I remember being at a basketball camp when I was a kid, probably 7 or 8 years old, and one of the coaches said to me, and this has stuck with me forever, is you're either getting better or worse every day. It's impossible to stay in the middle. So for whatever reason, that stuck with me. And so that's kind of molded me into this mode of like always wanting to get better every day because I'm scared of getting worse.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people as well, they just settle and people don't realize like where root of unhappiness comes from, because like there's nothing wrong with what is right now. And like, it's great to appreciate that. But, I think a lot of people's unhappiness or just unsatisfaction with life is realizing that they're not growing in some sort of sense, because growing brings a lot of happiness, and in whatever form it is. It doesn't have to be the same as someone else's. Like mine's not going to be real estate like yours. Yeah. Fair enough. But whether that be like learning a new skill or personal development or reading a new book, just taking more in is ultimately going to lead you to be a lot happier and more content with your life.
Absolutely. One of the other things you said is...
You forgot, didn't you?
About the universe.
Okay, yeah.
Trusting in the universe, yeah. Define that.
I think it's something that is kind of been shown to me over the past few years, just by going out there and being the best version of myself and kind of always having that growth mindset, and knowing that if you go out there and do it, it will all fall into place the way it is supposed to. And it comes from being a good person and putting out good stuff into the world. But a lot of stuff is out of our control. And the best you can do is just wake up every day, be the best version of you, and trust that it will fall into place the way it is supposed to. Not the way that we always want it to be. I think that's what people kind of get tied up in. They're like, get frustrated because things don't work out the way they want it to be, but that's not the way it was supposed to be. The way it's supposed to be is going to be the way it is if you go out there every day and be the best version of you, be a good person, go out there and do good things, and it's all going to circulate back to you. And I think especially like going on my journey to the Olympics, it kind of realized that, because I kind of got this opportunity like dropped in my plate out of nowhere, like holy shit, how does this happen? And worked towards getting it, and kind of at a certain point I realized like I can do the best that I can do, but actually making the Olympic team to a certain degree is out of my hands. But I went out there and I gave it everything, and I worked really freaking hard for it, and it worked out the way it's supposed to, and luckily I made the team. But if it didn't, I would have been okay anyways, because that wasn't the way it was meant to be. So I think that's really hard for people to kind of let go of that control sometimes. But once you do, you're just so much more satisfied at the end of the day, I think.
That's something I have a hard time with. And being as competitive as I know you are, I would assume it would be a difficult thing to get over in terms of not being in control all the time. Yeah. Have you consciously thought about how you can get over things that you can't control?
I think it's really like having a check with your ego, because if you can't get over it, it's your ego. And really looking at where that stems from. So for me, on my journey to the Olympics, you know, when I was heading into Olympic team trials, I kind of realized like, holy shit, I gave this my everything. I've literally like moved countries, dropped out of university, like I'm poor, all of this stuff. I've given up everything, left my family behind, and I have nothing. And to a certain degree, I did everything that I could possibly do leading up into Olympic team trials. And then kind of just looking at if I didn't make the team, what would that mean for me? And with a lot of like self-reflection, I realized like if I didn't make the team, I that was still success, because I went after what freaking terrified me. I worked really hard for it. I was passionate about it, and I was the best person I could be to a degree. Like everyone screws up along the way. And that kind of really helped in the sense of like, what is success for me? And success ultimately was the thing. Yes, the Olympics is a successful thing, but it was proving to myself that I was good enough, that I was capable enough, that I had it in me to do it. And that success came through the journey of going after it, not necessarily the thing. I think a lot of times we can get stuck on the thing. That's why people often can be unhappy, because goal setting is awesome, and I'm all for it, don't get me wrong, but I think if we only focus on the thing at the end of the day and not on the process and who we become in the process of getting there, then we're going to get there and be unhappy if you get it or if you don't get it. So I'm not sure if I answered your question.
That might be the best 1 minute clip we've ever had on the show, Carl.
Thank you.
Like, I believe in that so much. And if you follow my social media at all, a lot of it is talking about like for lack of a better term, the game, the process, getting from zero, the name of the podcast, zero to here. Where am I? I don't know. I'm somewhere in between of where I was and where I want to go. Yeah. And so I completely agree. And to me, the people that I've come across in business who are obsessed with the money or these very materialistic ideas never last very long. If you find something you're really passionate about and you work your ass off, it's just the game is the fun part.
Exactly.
It's not what the game gives you or what the results from the game.
Yeah,
it's the actual process and the grind of doing it every day.
And loving that and appreciating that. And I mean, you're not going to love every moment. At the end of the day, like, you know, in the lead up to the Olympics, I was training 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, sometimes 10 hours a day, 6 hours in the water. Like, you're not going to love every minute. That's a matter of fact. But day after day, if you look back and you're proud of what you're doing and you're appreciating what you're doing, that is success. And if you don't, like I love this story because in the lead up to the Olympics, we were working with this Spanish coach who came to help us. And she went to the 2008 and 2012 Olympics with the Spanish team and they won a silver medal. And she was saying to us that she saw her team, I interpreted it as she went up and saw her team win a silver medal and she felt empty because there's nothing wrong with achieving a medal at the Olympics. Obviously, it's amazing. But at the end of the day, it wasn't about the medal. It was about what she loved doing, which was coaching her team, which was being in the sport of synchronized swimming, which was being there every day and learning and being creative and doing it in a sporting atmosphere. And that is what mattered. And so many people get caught up in all the shit that doesn't matter. And then they realize how unhappy they are at the end of the day. And the materialist shit that you said. But it's loving it in the moment and loving almost every minute or majority of the time loving it. And then you will realize that you're successful, you know? And I think that's where a lot of people are missing the point.
It's almost this, for me, it's almost this idea of like continually proving myself wrong. You're like, I don't think I can put in this many hours. I don't think I can get to this thing, but if I work hard enough, I probably will. And so it's almost like going through the process, going through that daily grind. For me, it's work, a lot of it, but it relates to athletics, and that's where I learned it from as a kid. Yeah, it's figuring out that, oh, maybe I can actually do this if I put in this many hours. Maybe I can be as good as that guy that I'm looking at, or whatever it is. And it correlates so well between work and athletics.
It's that proving that voice wrong, because I think in all of us we have that voice of doubt and then the voice of belief, and there's always going to be that voice of doubt, that imposter syndrome, whatever it is, and that's natural and that's good, because I think that we all need that to have that positive voice overcome and be like, no, don't let that reign your mind. That optimism, that positivity, that belief is going to help you get to where you need to be, and it's going to help prove that voice of doubt wrong. And we need that opposition to make us competitive enough almost in our own mind to prove ourselves wrong, or that voice of doubt wrong, because at the end of the day, you know, you don't do it to prove anyone else wrong. It's ultimately yourself. Do it to prove anyone else right. It is ultimately yourself. And that's what I realized going after the Olympics, because, you know, as much as I thought that other people didn't believe in me, like, it doesn't really matter what they think. I thought that I couldn't do it. A little voice in me thought that I couldn't do it, but a bigger voice thought that I could. And ultimately I proved that little voice wrong, and I made it there.
Okay. I want to get into a little bit more of the backstory of your synchronized swimming journey. I also want to talk a little bit about what you're doing now, public speaking. I don't know a lot about DK Cooks, but I want to ask you a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure.
But let's start with synchronized swimming, the backstory, where I think you were 8 or 9 when you started.
Yeah, I was 8. Okay. A long time ago now. I'm like swimming with some girls that I have been swimming as long as they've been alive, so that makes me feel really old. So I started when I was 8 years old, and I always did, I mean, our families are majorly into sport, so I did swimming, gymnastics growing up. Swimming's really boring, back and forth. Gymnastics, too tall and awkward, and like you can fall over a lot, so that wasn't going to work out for me. And so my mom put me in synchro classes, and at first I really actually didn't like it. And this is like when I say to like school kids, listen to what your mom says, kids, and follow through. You need commitment, not always motivation. So I continued going for about 3 years, and I eventually fell in love with the sport. And
what did you not like about it at the beginning?
I was just a shy kid.
Yeah.
And I think that I don't like doing things that other people tell me I have to do. Like, I just like to resist. So my mom put me in, just like, you have to go every day. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to. And ended up loving it. Because I think I realized like how cool the sport is. And not a lot of people know about synchronized swimming, like back then, much less even now. And it's just such a different sport that not a lot of people know about. It's kind of combining athleticism and dance and like in the water, and just being able to do something that not a lot of people can do is so cool and so satisfying. And I eventually kind of came out of my shell, and I was able to form friendships with my teammates. And I loved the team aspect of it. Like, I love working together with people towards a goal. And I loved kind of the combination of me being a creative person, but also wanting to be athletic, that I can combine those two different avenues. But I call myself the unlikely Olympian, because I was never kind of on the path. Like, I was never that person that people pegged like, oh, she's gonna go to the Olympics someday. Like, I was probably the least likely if there's ever like a least likely list. And that also, like, I believed that about myself for a long time, so it was never gonna happen because I believed that, and those are my own thoughts. But I just loved it after a while, and I kept swimming throughout high school, and I got to year 11 and 12, and I kind of reached the end of the line in Canada. So I went to nationals in Canada, which I thought, which was amazing. And I thought this was the be all end all for me. And I was a reserve, like, on the team. So I didn't even really swim. But that was enough. And I thought it was enough. So at the end of high school, I retired, ironically, quote unquote, retired at 18, which is funny to look back now. If only I knew back then, because I just knew that it wasn't going to go anywhere. And kind of in different sports, you realize where the end of the line is. If you don't make it to a certain point, you just kind of know that you're not going to go any further. And it's cutthroat, and it's hard. But I kind of just accepted that was my life. And I went to UBC, and I decided to retire, and I kept coaching and stayed involved because I really loved it. And I actually went into masters synchro, which is pretty ironic. So masters, I was like 19 at the time, and I did masters synchro. And funny enough, I went to World Masters Championships in 2012 in Italy, 4 years before I went to the Olympics, which is pretty bizarre. So masters is usually for like old people, but here I was at 19. And I think, yeah, it was just because I loved it. And I always tell that to people. If you love something, it doesn't matter like what level you're doing at. If you love it, it's good enough for you, And I wasn't doing it at that point to make it to the Olympics, because that wasn't my journey. At least I thought. I was just doing it because it made me happy. In 2013, I was training one day at a training session, and we were doing a highlight. So a highlight in synchro is when we kind of build a human pyramid underwater. So people were holding my feet, and I had a teammate on my shoulders, and we went up. So you kind of make a spring in the water, and then my teammate went up and came straight down on my head. Yeah. And I got a concussion. And at the time I was in full-time uni. I was working 2 jobs and training, and I had a midterm the next day. And this was like at 10 o'clock at night, this training session. And I was driving home, and I felt fine at first. And I was driving home, and I started to feel really nauseous, and I was having a really bad headache. And I remember I was at home, and I was trying to study for my midterm, and there was words on the page, and it was English, but I had no idea what it said. And I just didn't comprehend in my brain. And I kind of looked to my mom and was trying to like say something to her, and it just like I couldn't formulate words. And I realized the next morning, slept for a ridiculous amount of time. The next morning, went to the doctor, realized I had a concussion, and that was shitty to say the least. It sucked, and it's so interesting looking back in hindsight, because at the time I ended up having to drop out of university. I had to stop everything. You pretty much have to like sit in a dark room and do nothing, and it's really depressing. And I was kind of like shaking my fist at the world, being like, why is this happening to me? Like, what did I do to deserve this? I think a lot of times when sucky stuff happens, like, we always look at like, what did I do to deserve this? And like, sometimes you need to just come from the perspective of like, what is this doing for you, and not like how it's against you, but what is it teaching you? So it's nice looking back and having that perspective. And yeah, it was hard, and it was dark, and I'm I don't have depression, but I definitely fell into a depression then, just because I felt like everything was taken from me. And concussions are hard because I kind of relate it to mental health, because people don't know what's going on in your mind. Like, you can't measure it, you can't take pills, there's not going to be a 6-week recovery period and then you can take the cast off and you're going to be okay. It's just, you need to kind of rest your brain, and when you think you're okay, like, then hopefully you'll be fine and you can roll back into it. But it took me a while to recover, and I actually spent my 21st birthday concussed, and it wasn't really how I thought it would be. I had a big party planned and all this stuff, and the day after my 21st birthday, I was chatting on the phone to one of my friends, and at that time, she got a message from the assistant national team coach of the Australian synchronized swimming team. And she had reached out to her and asked her if she would be interested to coming to Australia to try out for the Olympic team. So backstory here, our family's Aussie. So my parents were both born in Sydney. And so we're lucky enough to have dual citizenship if we go after it. And my friend as well had a Aussie dad, so she had dual citizenship too. So we're talking on the phone, and I'm so excited for her. I'm like, that's amazing. Oh my God, like, this is a crazy opportunity. And then she kind of looks at me and she goes, you could do this too. And then, of course, I'm like, no. There's no way. Of course, because I had like very little self-belief at the time. And then I kind of let it sink in, let the thought marinate. Oh, I could do it too. And then I imagined myself sitting on the couch in 2016 watching the Olympic Games, and I thought, I'd rather try and fail than always wonder what if. And it was massive fear in between the possibility of that happening or me going after it, but I realized that I would rather step into that fear and go after something that seemed so crazy than always wonder. And I think so many people let fear be an obstacle for them. So many people don't go after what they want to go after because they're like, oh, it's too scary. Oh, it's too difficult. But fear actually is like the gate between us and success, or, happiness, or whatever it is. If fear is like the obstacle between us and like breaking through to that next level of ourselves. But so many people just kind of step back and are like, no, like, that's too scary. And I just realized that I can't let this opportunity pass me by. Like, this stuff doesn't happen. I think sometimes in life, people get opportunities, and a lot of people don't see them as opportunities because they're like, that's not even a possibility, because I don't even think that I could do that. But I was like, this is a golden opportunity on a platter, and I'm going to grab it, I'm going to run with it, and I'm going to do my best. And I remember I went up to my parents after like thinking about it for a while, and kind of said to them, like, really sheepishly, I think I want to go to the Olympics. And they were like, yeah, I mean, you know them, they're lovely, but they're like, what? What? Where did this come from? Like, they kind of laughed in my face, and that was good. I'm glad they did it, because as soon as someone kind of says, I don't know if that's possible, you're like, no, excuse me. Like, who do you think I am? I can make that happen. And it set a bonfire under my ass to go after it. And I kind of kicked my concussion recovery into high gear. And, I was like, talking to everyone I could, going to OTs, figuring out the best way that I could recover, while also trying to get in shape to be good enough to get on the team. Because keep in mind, not only was I concussed, I was also in Canada. I was also never really that good at synchro. So, the obstacles between me and the possibility of it happening were so insane. But I wasn't going to let it pass me by. And within about 7 months of getting that opportunity, I packed up my bags, I left everyone behind, and I moved to Australia, and I went after it. And that kind of like led me down the path of I eventually made the team. And within a year of getting that opportunity and getting that concussion, I was competing at the World Cup on the Australian team, and on the track to go to the Olympics, in the future if we qualified. And it just seemed, looking back, it's like, how the shit did I have the courage to do that? I don't know. But I kind of see it like, imagine it as, you know, when people go and jump off a 10-meter diving board, and then there's like the two types of people. You have the people that are like going to walk to the edge, look over, they walk back, and they do that for about like 30 minutes, and they're like, no, it's too difficult. No, it's way too difficult. And then you have the people that are like, fuck it, I'm just going to go for it and just run and jump. And sometimes in life, you got to do that. And that, looking back, that was me, you know, like just don't think about all the different possibilities of what might happen, because there's no point entertaining those thoughts. You just got to freaking run and jump and do the best you can, and whatever's meant to be will be. So that's kind of like my trajectory to how I moved to Australia, and I made it on the Australian team. And within, 2 years of moving there, we eventually went to World Championships in 2015, beat the New Zealand team to qualify our spot in the Olympic Games. And then we had to compete against each other. So what a lot of people don't know is you may qualify your country as a team for the Olympics, but you don't actually qualify yourself. So then after always being a team player and loving being part of a team sport, I had to go up against my teammates and compete for a spot in the Olympic team. And like I was saying before, I kind of had that revelation right before the Olympic team trials, which made it all, kind of put it all together for me. And what I learned, as much as it was so hard, like competing against my teammates, because I've always loved doing things together, and kind of realizing I had to focus on myself, it was such a good learning lesson, because I realized, I think a lot of times in life, we're in a world where now everyone can work hard. People say like, you got to work hard to get there. Like, a lot of people can work hard, like, newsflash. But what can you do different? What can you do to set yourself apart? And I had to work smarter rather than harder. And I had to realize and be really self-aware of like, this is what I'm really good at, and this is what I'm shit at. And I need to make sure that I amplify everything that I'm really good at, so it's so amazing that they can't deny that they need me on the team, and work on everything that I suck at extra hard and make that better, so I'm at least average at that. I think a lot of times people are not really good at being self-aware and realizing and distinguishing their strengths from their weaknesses. But once you understand that, I think that truly leads you on a path to success. And having a good old check with your ego and realizing that will completely catapult you into a different direction. And I honestly think that, with a combination of just realizing that I had already succeeded by going after it, I think that combination helped me get on the team. And then I made it on the Olympic team in April 2016, and had a epic few months of leading up to the Olympic Games, and then I went.
Okay, before we get to the Olympics, there's a few things in the journey that I wanted to talk a little bit more about. First, synchronized swimming in Canada, United States, and North America is not highly publicized.
No, not at all.
I don't even know a lot of the rules.
Yeah.
So can you give us like a really brief intro into like how scoring is judged? It's judged, right? It's judged. And I don't know, maybe give us like a little summry of synchro.
So
because the only time we ever see it is the Olympics.
At the Olympics. That's what everyone says to me. They're like, what do you do in between now and then? We actually train a lot. Yeah, and that's kind of the battle that we're up against, is we're trying to get more publicity for synchronized swimming and make sure that we're not only shown every 4 years at the Olympics, because we compete a lot every single year. But anyways, so at the international level, we have two routines. So a technical routine and a free routine. So in the Canadian terms, if you ever watch figure skating, there's like a technical routine and a free routine. So technical routine, you have certain aspects or movements that everybody has to do, and you're judged on those. And we have at international level judges from all around the world, and you judge out of 10. So similar to diving. You're given a score out of 10. And then we have a free routine where you can pretty much do whatever you want. And those routines, the technical routine's about 3.5 minutes, the free routine's about 4.5 minutes. And those two scores are combined together to make your total score, and that's how you get your ranking. But if you don't know much about synchro, first of all, YouTube it, because it's freaking awesome to watch and pretty phenomenal. So basically it's a combination of dancing, gymnastics, acrobatics. You need flexibility, you need endurance, you need athleticism, and we synchronize ourselves to the music and to each other in a routine that lasts last about 4 minutes long. And we do stuff upside down and right side up to the music while moving up and down the pool, holding your breath for 50% of the time, changing patterns, counting with the music, smiling, or making any facial expression, depending on what the theme is. So a lot of people think it's just like the old lady sport with like the flower caps doing like the cadence dive. But it's actually a lot harder than that. And I think it deserves so much more respect than it has been given. Next time you go for a swim, just try and like go upside down and put your feet together, point your toes, and get your butt out of the water. Like, it is a lot harder than it looks. Yeah, and I think it's like the coolest and hardest sport in the world, and I'm willing to argue that thoroughly. But I think it's hopefully starting to get a bit more respect going forward. And I'm embarking on a pretty new cool adventure at the moment. So men have just been introduced into synchronized swimming in the past couple of years. So me and my duet partner who is a male, we are doing a mixed duet, and we're aiming to go to World Championships in July 2019 in South Korea. So that's a cool new aspect because it's a very female dominated sport. So it's going to be cool to see men kind of trickle their way into there, because I think once that happens a little bit more, unfortunately, the way the world is, we might get a little bit more publicity and notice. Yeah, it'll be cool to watch this space, see where it goes. It's going to be very cool in this future.
How many judges are there?
There is at international. Yeah, there's about 5. There's different panels, so we're judged on depending on the routine, artistic impression, so like how you relate your routine or your theme to the music. So for example, at the Olympics, our free routine, we swam a Australian theme routine, so kind of the Australian flora and fauna. So we've tried to represent the different animals and agriculture in Australia, and how you relate that through your movement and through the music, and through your bathing suits and expression and so forth. And then execution, like how synchronized you are with each other, and then difficulty, like how many difficult movements you do. So quite often more difficult things is if you do more highlights, you throw more people out of the water, you're higher out of the water, you have more 2-leg or 2-arm things, and the combination of all those scores makes the total score.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's about 5 judges on each panel.
Is there ever any judges that you really don't want to see? Like in figure skating, you never want to see a Russian judge, right?
Yeah. At the international level, like they're pretty good at being unbiased. Like at a domestic level, you kind of know some judges that may like you or not as much or much, but I won't go into that in case they're listening.
What is the likelihood that the Russian judges are listening to the Z2H podcast, Carl?
Yeah. Very high, hopefully.
I wanted to dig into the concussion a little bit more.
Yeah.
I feel like that was a pretty big turning point. And not that you ever saw it coming.
No.
So going into the concussion, how old were you? You were 20?
21. 20, yeah.
And that was when you had basically thought you were retired from synchro. You're just kind of doing it more as a hobby. Yeah. You mentioned that the concussion kind of put you into a little bit of a depressed state. Mm-hmm. Was it that phone call from the friend that kind of got you out of that depressed state, or like what was your mindset? Define depressed state. Like what was going through your head? Because it obviously wasn't like I can't do synchro competitively anymore, because you had already kind of mentally got over that. Yeah.
I think it was more from the aspect of because everything was taken away. Like I had to drop out of university. I was doing uni full time. I had to stop working. I had to stop everything. So it's like everything, if you imagine if you had to stop everything in your life, everything that you think defines you is taken away. So you kind of lose your sense of self. And I say I fell into a depressed state because it wasn't even that I felt sad. It's just that I felt nothing. And that's what I hear people that struggle from depression feel like. And I just felt empty. Like I just couldn't understand why this was happening to me. And I had a lot of like self-pity, which looking back, I'm like, Jesus, like get over yourself. But you know, that's where I had to be at the time. I mean, there's so many worse things that happen to people in the world. Like I totally get that. Like I was depressed, I was concussed, like I was fine. And I think it's also because of the concussion, there's just so little answers out there about how to recover, that was a struggle. It's not like I could follow a recovery plan. Like if you get, if you break your leg or if you have a bad injury in sport, there's kind of a plan that you can follow, and you have like a 6-week return to sport or whatever it is. And it makes sense. Whereas so many people that I would talk to is so many different opinions about what I should do to recover. There's just so little information on it. And I mean, you can't get a CAT scan, you can't get a brain scan or anything to understand what it is. Like doctors really don't know much about it, other than the fact that you kind of have to lie in a dark room and have no technology around for as long as possible to rest your brain. And like, that's really hard, like no screens, no reading, no nothing, no stimulation. Like, especially if you're an active person, like I was in uni full time, working 2 jobs and training on the side. Like doing nothing all day is actually really hard. So it just like I completely lost everything. But it was so good looking back, because it was kind of an integral point in my life, because I didn't realize, but I was unsatisfied with the point that I was at anyways. Like I was on this path of, especially in Vancouver, we're kind of like conditioned to believe that you have to go to high school, obviously you have to go to high school, and then you have to go to university, and then you have to get a degree in something, even if you don't know what it is, or even if you don't know what you want to do, you have to get a degree, because that's what everyone else does, and if you don't do it, you're going to fail. And then you have to go get another degree, because the first degree doesn't count for anything nowadays, and then you have to go out there and be a real person and get a successful job. And I was in university studying art history, which is like very interesting, not very useful. And I was just kind of like, what am I doing? Like, where am I going to go with this? And looking back, this is my like trust in the universe. It was kind of like a knock on the head being like, you're on the wrong path. And I'm so grateful that it happened, because Jesus, I'm really glad I don't have, first of all, a degree in art history. And I'm also really happy that I went on an adventure, and now I live in Australia.
How did you, I guess, was that phone call kind of the re-energization of Danielle Kettlewell?
Yeah, totally.
It was just like the opportunity sparked something, and you're like, hey, I'm going to get out of this funk and move on.
I think I saw... I think I've always believed, like I've always had this passion and desire and craving and thirst to do something great in this world, as I think a lot of us do. And I just didn't see how I was going to do that on the path that I was going down. So it kind of opened my eyes to what is possible, and gave me a little bit of belief again in what is possible in this world, because I lost that through my concussion, and I just kind of thought, shit, this is my life now, this is what happens, and I'm gonna go back. And I lost my sense of self, and it helped me realize, what I could be, if I was brave enough to go after it. So it sparked a bonfire under my ass, like I like to say.
Where did that confidence come from? Because earlier you said you felt like you weren't a very good synchronized swimmer, even at the Canadian level. Yeah. So I guess where does that come from, being like, I'm not that good in Canada, but I think I can perform on a world stage? Yeah,
totally. A lot of people ask me this, and it's funny looking back, kind of, I think everyone to a degree has that inside of you. You have that devil and angel, like that voice of doubt and that voice of belief. And I think at that point, it was like my voice of belief was like 51% of me, and my voice of doubt was 49%. And just working every day to just make it a little bit more. And even if I didn't fully believe it at the time, I like to say, you hear a lot of people say this now, fake it till you make it. And you gotta kind of go out there, and even if you don't fully 100% believe in yourself or what you're doing, just pretend that you do, and eventually you get there. Because like I said, I'd rather have that attitude than look back and always regret it. And I think a large part of it, there was the fear of the opportunity, but there was also a fear of like not living life to my fullest potential. I think a lot of people like allow that to overwhelm them, and they have this fear that they're not going to live their greatest lives, but the fear of going after what they want is even harder. So they just let that overtake them. But then they always have that niggling feeling. They're like, oh, I could be so much more. And I was just terrified of that being my life. I was terrified of like losing that spark. And I think I definitely lost that spark through my concussion. And it was kind of a way to get it back. Even if I wasn't going to make it to the Olympics, it was a way of getting that passion and that fire back. Because like I said, I think I'm like a passionate life enthusiast. And I didn't like not having that through my concussion. So yeah, it just inspired me to go after that, and that confidence of just faking it, pretending. Like, I'm sure that you felt that when you started out. Like, I think everyone feels that when you start out.
I still have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, do any of us? Well, I think we're all just pretending, and like you make a step in the right direction. And you're like, oh yeah. Now this is the right way. Or they're like, this is what I'm supposed to do, or this is where I'm supposed to be. And just pretending if you don't fully believe, and eventually you get there.
Now, is the Australian synchronized swimming team tryout, is that an open tryout?
Yeah,
like, it sounded like your friend got invited, and she's like, hey, I have a friend, can she come with me or what? Yeah, so synchronized swimming in Australia is actually smaller than it is in Canada, so it's really, really niche sport, and pretty much they put out an expression of interest to anyone that is interested, and has obviously the capability through citizenship and stuff. And then we went to a training camp, so within about, when I got my concussion and then got that opportunity, within about 6 weeks, that was mid-November, beginning of January, me and my friend were flying to Perth for a training camp. And anyone can attend the training camp. And then eventually we had trials, and we were selected on the team. And there's a squad of about 12. And then there's 8 that swim in the pool at the time. So it was making the squad of 12 and then eventually making it to the 8 to be able to swim and compete at the competition. From the time you went to that first training session, which was 6 weeks after you decided you were going to do it, what, going into your head, like what was the percentage that you thought that you were going to make the team? Were you like, I can totally do this? Or was it like, I literally have no shot, this is just gonna be a fun experience, might as well give it a shot?
Well, first of all, we had to go and like see what everyone else is like to suss it out. And then first of all, that first training camp that I went to, I sucked. Like, I was real bad. And I knew it, and that's okay. Like, self-awareness is very good. But it also made me realize there was maybe like 16 of us. Like, I wasn't that good, but I also saw the possibility of what I could be through hard work. And I was ready and willing to do that. And it kind of, as much as if it was difficult, it kind of showed me that it is possible, even if there is a 5% chance, that it's worth it for going after the 5%. And I think so many people are like, oh, it's only 5%. And then but you need to take the attitude of like, oh my God, there's a 5% chance I can make it onto the Olympic team. And that is enough, and chase for that, because the people that believe in that are the people going to do that. The people that don't believe in themselves aren't going to make anything of themselves.
Totally. What, I guess, what was the feeling like when you found out you made the team?
Oh, it was like the most overwhelming feeling in the world. And it's funny because so there was 2 kind of pinnacle moments in my journey to the Olympics. The first one was we had to beat the Kiwis to qualify. So it's continental qualification. And Australia, fortunately, doesn't have that many people to compete against in their continent. So it's Australia versus New Zealand to make it to the Olympics. And in Russia in 2015, we went to World Championships. And it was really close. And we weren't sure if we were going to be able to beat them. And when we did, that I would say was actually more of a satisfying moment for me than personally making the Olympic team, because like I said, I'm a team player. Like, I love achieving it with other people. And I think I love this saying, like, happiness is only real when shared, because the feeling of going after something together with the squad of 12 of us and working your ass off, like, and the amount of days that you are literally so tired, you feel like you can't even move, like your brain doesn't work, you're stressed out, you're not sleeping because you have the routine running through your head, and just all of the sacrifices that run through your head. And then you're holding your teammate's hand, and we were watching the screen, seeing what the Kiwis were going to get, because we knew what we needed to get to beat them. We realized we had a higher score than them, and we qualified for the Olympics. And all of us were just jumping up and down and screaming and crying, and just everything floods through you. So that for me was actually like a more satisfying moment, because we did it together. And then actually making it on the team personally, don't get me wrong, it was amazing. And we had a three-day Olympic team trial where 5 international judges flew in from around the world, and we had 1 full day of swimming our technical routine for them, 1 full day of swimming our free routine, and then there was a day for the duet that goes to the Olympics as well. And we, on the 4th day, we were going to find out, we were going to get a call at 9 a.m. in the morning. They were going to start calling us. And I remember the night before the call, all of us were like sitting together and like none of us could sleep. Like, you're sick, because that's almost like the worst point, because at that point you can't do anything. Like, before the Olympic team trials is almost a better spot to be because you have control over the situation, but after it you've given everything and now you just got to hope that it was good enough. And you know, we're all ruminating like all the different possibilities and sitting there with our teammates, like looking around, you're like, there's 3 of us that aren't going to make this team, because there's 12 of us on the squad, only 9 made it to the Olympics. And I didn't sleep at all that night pretty much, and woke up the next morning and was at home and you know, waiting for the call, and they were going to call the bottom 3 people first, and then 12, 11, 10, and then they're going to call the top 9. So you're like calculating in your mind, okay, like how long is each phone call going to take, because I want to make sure that I definitely don't get called before like 9, 10, because then that's a really bad sign. And I'm like pacing my house, like I feel like I'm going to vomit, and like shaking because you're so tired and like physically exhausted, and like you like checking your phone, like, you know, the minutes feel like hours. And I got a call, I think it was like 9:08, and then the phone rings. I'm like, oh my God, I do not want to answer. Like, it's too early. No. You don't want to even pick up. And then I picked up the phone, and it was the president of Synchro Australia at the time, and so casual. He's like, yep, of course, Danielle, you made the Olympic team. I have a few other people to call now. Like, if you don't mind, gotta go. I like just started bawling, like sobbing from my like core of my being, because in that moment, like, you just think of everything. Like your whole, it's kind of like a, you know, a movie, like flashback, like montage, like everything just goes through your mind of all those days where you were so tired, but you didn't give up. Like all those moments where you sacrificed so much along the journey. Like I sacrificed so much time away from my family. I sacrificed my uni degree. I sacrificed like so many different things on the journey, and it just all comes flooding to you, and you're like, it was all worth it. It was all worth it. But I realized it was worth it before that moment. But it's just kind of like the cherry on top when you realize at that moment, you're like, holy shit, I'm going to the Olympics. And it was just an amazing feeling. And then I think one of the best parts too is, like I said, happiness is only real when shared. So calling my family and friends for the next like 2 hours and telling them, and like just screaming on the phone with them and jumping up and down, like sharing that experience was just like, there's just nothing else. It's just like emotional, like overwhelm. Like your brain gets clogged because there's so much excitement. Like I would get headaches from being excited.
Who was the first person you called?
Oh, so I was trying to call my dad, your uncle. He was calling me like all morning. So keep in mind, I was in Australia. He was in Canada. He called me like 3 times before 9 a.m. He's like, "Have you gotten the call yet?" I was like, "I'm gonna call you, obviously." And no, I haven't gotten the call yet. And then obviously I try and call my parents first. And they don't pick up. I called them like 5 times. I'm like, hello, we all know that 9 a.m. was the time. Like, we talked about this. You called me at 8:45. How do you not pick up the phone at 9:10? And then they, like, an hour and a half later, they pick up the phone and they're like, oh, sorry, our phone was in charge on the other room. I'm like, of all times, guys, come on. Like, this was the one time that you had to have your phone. So anyways, I talked to my sister first because my parents didn't pick up. And my partner at the time was with me too, which was awesome to share that with him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's a crazy story.
It's cow. Really fun to share. Yeah.
Okay, let's flash forward to the Olympics.
Yeah. I love talking about the Olympics.
Let's talk about the training, actually.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, based on how small globally of a sport synchro is, that funding is not exceptional.
Mm-mm. No.
So, is everyone on the team like having full-time jobs throughout the training? And I guess what does a training day look like? You're working around people's work schedules? Like how does that work?
Yeah, so it's complicated. In Australia, we have very minimal funding, and actually just this year we got our funding completely cut from the government. So
100% cut?
100% cut.
Holy.
So we have some external sponsorships like Hancock Prospecting, some mining companies. But you actually, in Australia, you have to pay to be on the Australian team. So not only do you have to be able to afford to pay to live, and just like live like a normal person, you also have to pay to be part of the team, which is just ridiculous. And a lot of people don't know that. And I think I'm not afraid to say that and share that, because I think a lot of people think that going to the Olympics and being on a national team is all glitz and glam and glory, and it's not that at all. That's like the NBA, NFL, NHL lifestyle. That's not a lot of sports lifestyles. Most of the sports that you see at the Olympic Games, like a lot of them are struggling athletes. And if they are paid, like I know the Canadian Synchronized Swimming team, I think they got their funding cut, but they might be paid like a stipend of like $1,200 a month, which is not a lot. That pays for rent and a bit of food, and
not
that's all you got, Yeah, exactly. Like not a lot. Yeah. So I wouldn't have been able to do it. Like I had the help of my family to do it, but I was also working too. And, we have an interesting program in Australia where we're all around the country, and we'd come together in the lead up to the Olympics, sometimes 2 weeks out of every month, sometimes 2 weeks out of 6 weeks, something like that, for a training camp. And it's hard because you have to find a job, first of all, that will let you go away for 2 weeks, which is not that easy. And when you're in your home city, you have to work and train at the same time. So when I was in Perth, we'd be training 5-6 hours a day, sometimes 6 days a week, and we'd either be coaching, or sometimes I'd work at the bar till 1 a.m, walk home because I couldn't afford a car, wake up at 5 a.m, walk to training, have 4 or 5 hours of training, and then go home and have a nap. And that's the reality. Like, it's not glamorous, and it's really hard. It's funny too, because I was bartending, and people are like, oh, what are you doing in Australia? And you're like, oh, I'm on the Australian national team. And I think it just, people don't realize that you're not. I was talking to school once, and they're like, I was telling them about my Olympic journey, and the kids were like, are you famous and rich, and do you have a car, and do you have abs, and like all this stuff? I'm like,
do you have abs?
They're like, can I see? I'm like, no, I'm not showing you my stomach. That's weird. Anyways, but yeah, people just, it's wonderful because they build athletes up and Olympians up to this crazy level. But the realism of a lot of sports is that a lot of people struggle, and they get there any way that they possibly can. And a lot of people only do well in the Olympic scheme through sponsorship. We are sponsored as a team, but we didn't have any individual sponsorship. And then when we were on training camp, so we would go to either Queensland or Perth or the Australian Institute of Sport in the capital city, Canberra, and we trained there. And when we're on those training camps, we were training, you have 2-3 hour sessions. Basically a day looks like you wake up, you have breakfast, you have land from 8 till 10, water from 10 to 1, you have lunch, then you go back at 2, you have a land from 2 to 3, back in the water from 3 to 6 or 4 to 7 or whatever, and then you have dinner, and then you have meetings. So you're in the water 6 hours a day, you have maybe anywhere from 2 to 4 to 5 hours of land, and you do that 6 days a week, and sometimes you get a half day or a full day off. So it's really hard, and that's just the nature of the sport, because there's a lot of aspects to it. And it's really complicated. So that's what you need to do. And that's what all the countries in the world do. But it is exhausting. And so obviously when you're on training camp, you just can't work. There's just no possibility. You barely have enough energy to eat your food at the end of the day or talk to your family, much less go to a job. But you do what you got to do to get there. It's hard work. It's not easy. It's not glamorous, but it's worth it.
This is the kind of stuff I like talking about, is the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
The Olympics was probably this really fun, glamorous event / party almost, staying in the athletes village. But I like hearing the backstory. I like hearing how mentally tough you have to be, regardless of whether it's in a sport or running your own business or whatever it is. How mentally tough you have to be to grind through those moments that no one sees.
Yeah.
The kid thinks you're famous because you were on TV for 2 weeks.
I'm like, no.
And apparently you have a six-pack.
Yeah. It's a lot of people, I love this saying, you see the glory, not the story.
Yeah.
it's hard. You know, I remember there are some days that I remember coming home to my partner at the time, and I was, you know, this is like a year and a half out from the Olympics. I bawling because like I was so physically exhausted, physically and mentally, because synchro, I mean, sport isn't just a physical thing, it's very mental. Like you're not turned off, you got to be switched on the whole time. I was physically and mentally exhausted from having to train all the time and work and be still poor, and have those other external stresses of life. And I just was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it. Like, I am so tired. I'm so tired of being tired. And I'm so tired of being stressed. Like, how am I going to make this possible? I think it's just like, we're all going to have those moments if you're going after something incredible. Like, that's natural. Let yourself have that moment. Like, let yourself sit in that emotion. It's okay. It's okay to feel that way. You're allowed to feel that way, and then move through it, and then remind yourself of what you're doing. And like, do you really love it? Use that moment as, I was exhausted, but I did love it, and I was happy I was going after it. If you have that moment and you're exhausted and it sucks and you hate what you're doing, and you've hated what you're doing for 6 months, you've hated it for a year, then maybe have a check at like what you're doing with your life, and maybe you need to go on a different path. But I still loved it. And sinking back into that motivation and thinking about that girl, you know, when I was younger, or that girl when I started on the journey, that I thought that, you know, that belief of not thinking I'm good enough and wanting to prove myself wrong, that helped at the end of the day. And taking those little steps, you know, I think a lot of the time it's really easy to focus on the big goal. You know, sometimes when it was hard, you know, we do a lot of stuff, synchronized swimming, when we're holding our breath. So sometimes you're literally holding your breath so long, you can start seeing spots. Your lungs can start convulsing because your body wants oxygen. And that is very hard to push through. And I would imagine the Olympic rings in my mind. I'd imagine like the Olympic ring tattoo on my ankle that I wanted. And that would pull me through. Which is really good, but also don't forget about the small steps. Because I think a lot of people, you know, if you are going after a goal, obviously enjoying the journey, but remembering that if I just went to training every day saying that I wanted to make the Olympic team, I would never have gotten there. I needed to realize like the small steps that I needed to do to improve myself every day along the journey to get there. Because I think a lot of people don't achieve things because they think too big picture. You know, it's good to have that light at the end of the tunnel, but you need to think about the step that you're going to take next first. And if you don't think about each step at a time, you're never going to get to the end of the tunnel, or the top of the ladder, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So realizing like at the time, I had our sports psychologist told us that the best athletes in the world, they all went to training every single day with a goal, and they would journal every single day. So that's something that I was like, well, they do it, I'm going to do it. You know, follow the people that have done it before, like follow in their footsteps. You don't need to recreate the wheels. They've been successful. I'm going to do it too. So I'd have my journal every day. I would write down 3 things that I wanted to improve on, 3 things that I did good that day, and like write down how I feel too. And I'd, you know, have a goal for every day. I'd have a goal for every week. I'd have a goal for the season. I'd have a goal for the month. Like, constantly reflecting on that, I think that is a massive part. Not just being so forward focused, but realizing like, what did I do good today? What did I do bad today? What can I do better? You know, there's reflecting too much on the past is bad, but reflecting in small aspects of like, what can I improve on, is really positive. And I think that really helped in my trajectory. I think I've totally gone on a tangent.
That's okay. That's what the podcast,
okay, good,
I think podcast equals tangent, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's what the definition is.
Okay.
Carl, can you look it up? What is the definition of podcast? So you said you would have these days of coming home being completely exhausted, and you allowed yourself to stay in that moment of weakness. How long do you allow yourself to stay? Because I'm not good at that. I find myself mentally, when I have those moments of weakness, switching it off very quickly. Yeah. Because I think it's counterproductive. So I'm curious to hear your perspective of allowing yourself to go through that emotional state, and how long does it last for, and then what ultimately allows you to turn it over like the next day when you're going to training again. Yeah.
I think it's, and I have that attitude too. And I think a lot of people struggle with, you're not allowed to feel that, you know, you're not allowed to feel that it's hard, or you're not allowed to be angry. You're not allowed to be sad or whatever. Like, we repress that because like, we're only allowed to be happy in this world. Like, success is happiness. Like, that's not true. Like, life is a roller coaster of emotions, and that is okay. But I think it's so important to allow yourself to feel those shitty things sometimes, because emotions are energy in motion, and they need to allow themselves to be in motion. You need to feel that, or else what's going to happen is you're going to repress that emotion, and it's going to come out like in a relationship or to a friend or in training or some other aspect where you're going to be really angry and you're like, oh my God, where is this coming from? Like, I don't feel this way. It's because you had this emotion that you just allowed like to stuff down and didn't let yourself feel it. So for me, it allow whatever the time period is, I find it easy in a day, go to bed, wake up, it's a new day. Then you're gonna feel better again. Or, change your state. It's easier now that I'm not training as intensely, but at the time, like, going for a walk wasn't really possible because I was so tired. But do something to allow yourself to feel it, whether it be an hour, whether it be for a few hours, and then change your state. Do something that makes you happy again. Go for a walk, talk with a friend, go do some exercise, like eat some good food, meditate if that's your thing, like whatever it is. Change your state to make yourself feel better, or go to sleep, wake up, it's a new day. But I think it's so important to allow us to feel that, because it was okay that I was feeling that. Like, I was tired. Like, no one could tell me that I wasn't. No one can tell me that I wasn't working hard. No one can tell me what I was doing wasn't difficult. I'm allowed to feel that. Like, you're allowed to feel annoyed or shitty or angry sometimes. Happiness is only one aspect of the spectrum. And I think when you realize that and allow yourself those emotions to flow, like, you're going to be in a state of more happiness. Or when you get back to that, you're going to have more success. So when I go to training the next day, I'm going to do better because I've allowed myself to like move through that, and now it's gone, and now we can move forward.
That's good shit.
Hopefully that's helpful.
I struggle with that. I don't know mentally if it's just that I can't allow myself to be weak. There's definitely moments. Yeah. But they just don't last long. Yeah. It's like, if I have these goals, I can't allow myself to waste time on things that a week from now, a month from now, a year from now are so insignificant. Yeah. Whereas like in the moment they seem like big deals. Yeah. But a month from now you wouldn't even think twice about it. Yeah. So I think that's where I kind of try to pull myself out of a situation and be like, this is a really small thing that I'm upset about. Let's try to move on and forget about it. Yeah. I think that there's a balance, we don't want to do that too much. So we're always sitting in anger or unhappiness or whatever. But I think the downside of mental toughness is that you don't allow yourself to feel that. And especially being an athlete or being an entrepreneur or going after something or kind of being aggressive in what you want in life. It's really easy to be like, no, I'm not allowed to feel that, switch it off. But that shit's gonna come up somewhere else, or it's just gonna keep coming up, or you're gonna keep being angry if you don't deal with it. Like in the long run, you're gonna be more successful if you allow yourself to move through that to a certain degree. You have to, like, it comes from self-awareness, like looking at, where is this coming from? Is it coming up too often? Am I feeling shitty every single day at 3:00? Well, then that's when we might need a little bit of mental toughness to like get over yourself. But is it something massive, that's something that happened, and I'm allowed, it is difficult to deal with, and I'm allowed to feel this way. It's a balance in society. Like, I'm not saying I have it right. I don't know all the answers. This is what works for me. Totally. And I think it'll work for other people, but everyone has to try it out, figure out what works for you. Yeah. I like it. Olympics. What a crazy experience that must be, eh? Yeah. Was it just like a crazy whirlwind of 2 weeks that felt like 5 minutes? Yeah. Yeah, it was, I am so grateful that I went into it never thinking that I would be there, because it gave me so much gratitude being there. Like, I never thought, I was never on this trajectory to be an Olympian. So getting there the whole time, I was like, holy shit, this is so cool. But it allowed me to be really present, I think. A lot of my teammates, and I was a bit older, like I was the second oldest on the team, so I was 23 when I went. One of my teammates was 17. So having a bit more life experience, I think, helped, and not in a patronizing way, but just in the fact that, like, I think the older you get, you realize how fleeting time is and how fast stuff passes. Yeah. So I really made sure that I was like as present as I could possibly
be in every single moment and soaked it all in. But at the same time, what I found so weird about the Olympics is it is massive, but you can't treat it like that. Because if I wake up every day or I go to every training session thinking like, oh my God, I'm at the Olympics, this is so exciting. Like, first of all, I give myself headaches because I would be so excited. And second of all, you can't live in that state. Like, you have to live in this weird bubble where everything is normal. Like, it is normal to be living in an Olympic village. It is normal to like be seeing people walking around with gold medals. It is normal to like have free McDonald's. There's free McDonald's in the village. It is normal to like be, everyone is wearing like the colors of their country and like nothing else, because you're not allowed to wear everything else. Like, it is normal every day to wake up and go and train in the Olympic pool you're going to compete at. Like, kind of living in this weird like bubble of like not making things overly excitable because you have to like stay laser focused on what your goal is.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask you is, how do you do that in that environment? So there's, how many athletes is there in the Olympics? 3,000 or 4,000?
10,500.
That's a lot more than I thought.
Yeah.
Right. So
Winter Olympics is about 2,000. Summer is about 10,500. Okay. Yeah.
So Summer Olympics, there's 11,000. Are all of them staying in the village?
For the, not all of them. So it depends where the, like where your sport is. So like some of the rowers and stuff, if they were, rowing really far away, there was like another like mini village, but the main village, there's about 10,500 athletes. And there, you know, there's all the coaching staff and like all the, other people that, you know, help the countries. And then there's all the staff for the Olympic Village. So in the Olympic Village, it literally is a village. There's about 30,000 people there.
So I guess my question is, how do you balance staying focused and eating correctly when there's free Big Macs? Not drinking so much. Like, how do you stay focused on your event and your team and like what you came there to actually do, rather than coupling that with taking in the entire experience?
Yeah, I think that this is something that I didn't expect, but like I said, you kind of have to make it not a big deal. And you kind of have to put yourself in this little bubble of this is my normal. Like, I just wake up every day at the Olympics and I go and sit with other athletes, and you kind of have to make it underwhelming, which is something that like it was kind of disappointing, honestly, like, because you can't wake up every day in utmost excitement that you're there. It's just another day, and you have to make it your normal, which is difficult, and you have to appreciate that for what it is. Like, being an athlete at the Olympics is so different than being a spectator at the Olympics. And you have to keep your laser focused and remind yourself of your goals. And I think it was way easier being with a team. I can imagine it would be different, obviously, like being an individual athlete, because we would be accountable to each other. You know, we would, you know, we're still training 6 hours a day when we're at the Olympics, and, you know, we're doing video review and like watching everything and reminding ourselves of our goals and like our checks and what we want to achieve. So, you know, having the bubble of ourselves and the focus of our goals as well as kind of underwhelming the whole process. That's something that I learned, and appreciating it for what it was. You know, it wasn't how I expected it to be, but it was how it was supposed to be, and that is enough. And at the end of the day, I still went and had an amazing experience, and not a lot of people can say that. I'm
guessing that would be a pretty big challenge, because my thought would be 90% or more of those athletes living in that village for 2 weeks are not that mentally tough. And they're probably more taking advantage of the experience rather than staying mentally focused on what they're there to do. And I'm guessing in the world scale of the Olympics, what percentage of people actually going to the competitions are expecting to win or medal? Probably very few. Like someone from Belarus who is like, I don't know, the lowest quality basketball teams, Carl, like what is their chance of beating the US? 0. Unless everyone gets hurt the day before. The coaches have to play or something. Mike Krzyzewski checks it.
I'd still be worried about it.
So I'm guessing that a lot of people are there and it's a big party in the village. So it probably takes a lot of mental toughness to stay focused.
Yeah, I'd say it's the combination of like people are always finishing at different times too. So we competed right at the end of the game. So we had to stay focused for longer, which was kind of hard because like all the swimmers are done and they're just telling us about all the awesome parties that are in Rio that they're going to every night and they're staying up to 5 a.m. and you're like, oh God. But honestly, like It is hard, but it isn't, because once you're there, like I said, I love my sport. Like, I'm there because it was amazing for the Olympics, but I also love synchronized swimming and I love doing it with my team. So, you know, the gluttony parts of you can, you know, be excited for all of the other things, like the partying and all the, like, the perks, but just reminding yourself of what you're doing there and why you're meant to be there. It makes it easier to focus. And to be honest, like, there's a lot of this just general respect amongst athletes, because if people are going out to party, like, there's a respect that there's people that are still competing and we don't want to interfere with what they're doing, because those people have been there. And there's a lot of people drinking away their sorrows. There's a lot of people celebrating successes. I was in the funny story. I was in the we were in a building with the Fijian rugby sevens team who won a gold medal. I always remember this. I was like going up the elevator. We were on the 18th floor, and I was going up the elevator with 3 Fijian rugby coaches. They would have been like 350 pounds each, like massive guys. And I'm like, you know, a bit intimidated. And they just won a gold medal, and they're holding like between them like 15 bags of McDonald's. Like, so it's just like, it's the McDonald's smell, and I'm in the elevator like eating healthy. And it was Rio, so it was a slow elevator ride. So, you know, you get like the conversation, so what sport do you do? Yeah. And, you know, they were telling me that they're rugby 7 coaches, and then they're asking me like, what do you do? It's just me by myself. I'm like, oh, synchronized swimming, you know, thinking like they're probably going to be like, what is that? Yeah. And then they look at me and they're like, this one guy's like, I love synchronized swimming. I was like, oh, thanks, mate. And then he goes, Fiji will support you. He's like, because we were in the same continent, yeah, Fiji will support you. I was like, wow, that is something I never expected. So like the Fijian rugby coaches were like cheering us on when we were competing at the Olympics. That's just so like cool. Holding on to like the little stories like that, or, you know, the memories that I take with me. And yeah, you pick up this, as much as so much of it wasn't exactly how I thought it would be. There are so many different aspects which are so beautiful in certain ways. And another one of my favorite stories is I was walking into the cafeteria. So it's about the size of like 2 football stadiums in length. Like, it's massive. It's insane. And there's like free, you know, Coca-Cola sponsors the Olympics and McDonald's, like, of course. And so you can drink as much Coke and like Sprite and all of that you want. And there's, you know, all this pizza and pasta and different types of food in the salad bar. And you're walking in, and I was walking in one day, and in front of me, there was like this, I think it was Argentina. It's like little girl. She's probably like 5'2", and all of a sudden this table that she was walking to was just filled of like athletes from all different countries, because you have to wear a uniform at all times, so you know what country everyone's from. Everyone just stands up and just starts clapping for her, and I didn't even know what she had done, or like but clearly she had either just competed or just won a medal, and she was kind of standing there like with her hand over her chest, like just taking in the moment, like almost teary-eyed. And that for me was just such an epic moment, because like I love sport, but I also am obsessed with the Olympics, and the beauty of like what it is just brings the world together, and like everyone puts their political issues aside, and it's about sport, and it's about coming together. And just the fact that all these athletes from different countries that were not also from Argentina were standing up and cheering on the achievement and the goal that she had just done at the Olympics was just such a beautiful thing to witness. And like something like that is like, that is what it's about, you know. Those are the moments that I hold on to, and like that is what really matters at the end of the day. Even if every single day at the Olympics wasn't as insanely exciting as I thought it was going to be, like that fills my heart with joy. Yeah. Wow, that's pretty cool. When, I guess, looking at the Olympic athletes as a whole, not many of them are superstars, but was there ever like a starstruck moment where you saw Michael Phelps walking by, or like Usain Bolt walking by? Everyone asked me if I saw Usain Bolt. He like kept himself, like, because I was following him on Snapchat, so I'm like, I know where you are. You're in your room, and like you can see all the. So there's at the village. There's about 30 buildings, 18 stories high, and the buildings are like divided up with different countries. So like Australia had most of a building, and you have all the like the flags all over the building, so you know like where each country is. And like I could have found him if I wanted to, but it's a bit creepy. He kind of kept himself like away from everyone else, because as much as there's also like the starstruck mentality in the village, because as much as he's like safe, there's also 30,000 people who know who Usain Bolt is. So if he kind of goes out, like he gets mobbed, or like just athletes like wanting to take pictures with him and stuff. So I didn't see Usain Bolt. I think I saw Djokovic. Pretty sure. Yeah. And a few like American swimmers like Missy Franklin, Tom Daly is a British diver. We were training with like in the same vicinity as him, and like some people who you don't know, but like they're walking around with a gold medal around their necks, so you're like, they must be somebody, so take a picture. But like the Chinese gymnasts, they were so small.
So
also
little.
I'm 5'9", so I'm pretty tall. I was below average height in the village, which I just was just phenomenal. I was like, this is what it's like to be short, or like regular height. Like this is amazing, because everyone is so tall. Like they must find all the tallest people in China and just put them all on like whatever team possible, because I've never seen so many tall Chinese people in my life, like all at least 6 foot, except for the gymnast team. It's crazy.
The gymnasts are they look like they're 14.
I know. I was like, there's
so
no way you pass the age test. This photo, I'm like you have a missing tooth. Yeah. Like, you're not 16. Yeah.
Okay, seriously though, what was it like walking into the pool for your very first swim, your first event? What was the emotion? How were the nerves walking out from the dressing room, being announced, Team Australia, here they come, whatever? What was that moment like? It's
you're shitting yourself.
Yeah.
Complete honesty. And it's kind of crazy because a lot of people don't know, but like we were training in the venue that we were going to compete in almost every day. So it's not like you just show up and this is this new venue and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, what, so you're really used to it. It just has kind of all the glitz and glamour of like all the, the cameras and the camera crew and Olympic rings everywhere and like all the signage and everything. So it's like kind of what I said before, it's crazy and you're shitting yourself, but at the same time you kind of have to make it your normal, because if you think when you walk out there and you're swimming, you're competing, you're like, oh my God, this is my like one chance at the Olympics, you are gonna fuck up. Like that's like the psychology of being an athlete. You just have to go out there and do what you've done 1,000 times before, because I mean there's different types of sports. So basketball is going to be really different than synchro, but we have the same routine. So we go out there and we know exactly what we're going to do for every second. So we just had to go out there and do the same thing. So I was, so nervous and shaking, and you kind of almost feel like light and like you're going to faint. And the thoughts in your mind kind of come into your head of, oh, my family's out there watching, like everyone around the world is watching. You think of like, oh my God, this is the one, this is the one performance of my lifetime. But you kind of have to push all those thoughts away and just let yourself get into the zone and be really present, and really living in that presence. You realize that your body knows what you need to do, your mind knows what you need to do, and you just need to like do it again, and let it happen. So that kind of mentality took a lot of like, we work with sports psychologists, and I worked a lot on like my mental game, like in the lead up to a performance, and exactly what I needed to do, and working on that mental toughness in the moment was really important. And a lot of it just came down to being present, which is really interesting. But at the end, we went out there and we swam, but the whole thing, like we swim for 3.5-4 minutes. It goes by like that, So my whole lifetime of synchro ended up being 7 minutes on the Olympic stage. You're hours and hours, thousands of hours that you put in is 7 minutes, like what is 720 seconds. And you're standing up there at the end, and I was so proud of myself. But you also realize like I was saying before, like that was not the point. The point, the reason, the success was actually the journey for me getting there, you know, because if I had pegged how I wanted to feel on that one moment at the Olympics, I would be so unsatisfied. But realizing in the process, like, who I became in the process of going after that, like the experiences that I had, the things that I learned, the people that I met, the friendships that I made, all of that makes me who I am today more than that 7 minutes. Those 7 minutes of my life don't make me who I am. The journey of me getting there make me who I am. And realizing that like led me to have a lot of fulfillment, because we didn't go to the Olympics for a medal. Like, we were going there to do the best that we could. Because, you know, like you said, there's like 10,500 athletes, and they think there's like 300 something, 400 like gold medals, maybe, like a very small percentage. Like, you're a tiny percentage of the Olympics, much less the world, if you get an Olympic medal. So just going out there with the satisfaction of doing the best that you possibly could in the moment and in the lead up, like, you have to realize that that is why you do it. And I think that's why a lot of people like come back from the Olympics, or like outside of the Olympics, come back from like achieving their goal, quote unquote, and they're like, oh, that was it, you know, like that. I don't feel like I thought I would feel, because that's not the point. The point is going after it. The point is doing something that scares the shit out of you. The point is being passionate. The point is being committed. The point is not always being motivated, but doing it anyways. Yeah.
That was really good.
Thank you.
Looking at the whole journey from concussion, getting the phone call, to like the last day of the Olympics, what was the biggest thing you learned about yourself in that like crazy journey?
I think this is what like keeps me going here on out. I just proved to myself I can do anything. So now, like, I'm, as much as other stuff in life is scary, I'm like, well, I went to the Olympics and that was impossible, so I can do it. It kind of just gave me proof that whatever I believe I can achieve, and what you have as the thoughts in your mind majority of the time is who you become. And a lot of people's thoughts in their mind most of the time is that they can't do it, so they won't do it. It's like, if you believe you can, you can. If you believe you can't, you won't. And that's exactly what I think I carry forward. Just knowing that I can do anything I set my mind to, if I really want it, and if I follow the steps of stepping into my fear, not letting that be an obstacle, pushing forward, not always being motivated, but being committed, realizing that the success is going after it, not in the achievement. All of that can help me get to whatever I want in life. So I think that is such a blessing going forward, because I know that the Olympics was just the beginning for me, which is kind of like the bottom of the hill, which is terrifying to say to people, because then everyone's like, well, now what? Like, I'm working towards it. But just having the confidence. Now
you're going to try out for the Fijian rugby team?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, just 15 bags of McDonald's later. Yeah, so that's I think that's probably one of the biggest things I learned. Oh, I just have to share the story. Okay, this is I love the opening ceremonies. Okay, this is something that I've always loved watching growing up. Just always been obsessed with, and love watching the athletes walking out. And a lot of people don't know that you actually, a lot of athletes can't be in the opening ceremony because it's a really tiring process. Like, we left at probably 5 p.m. We get home at 3 a.m. You know, when you're in the stadium, you're not allowed to sit. You're not allowed to shit. You're not allowed to eat, like, and you're standing, which is really hard for athletes that are training all the time. So we got to walk in it because we competed right at the end, and we are in the village, and all the athletes like line up in their Olympic gear, and there's buses that have about 50 people, and there's about, with all the staff and stuff, there's thousands of people going to the opening ceremony, and everyone like piles in the buses. And I remember we were driving there, and they literally stopped all of the traffic in Rio, so all of the buses like in a line could get to the stadium, because it was about 45-minute drive from the village to the stadium. So you just kind of feel like royalty, like, oh my, there was a traffic jam for miles. And then we get to the stadium, and then you kind of all pile out, and you're standing there. Australia's at the front, because obviously it's an alphabetical order, and like me and my teammates like pushed our way to the front with our all together and standing like near the flag bearer, because we're like, we're gonna get on TV to wave to our parents, and we're kind of like piling into the stadium, and you have to walk through this dark tunnel, and you can hear like the roar of people inside, because there's like thousands and thousands of people inside and lights, but you walk through this dark tunnel and you see the light at the end, and I'm walking through the tunnel and like holding my teammate's hand, because it's just at that moment like I was allowing myself to feel all the emotion, because I didn't have to, this wasn't competition, like this was just a moment that you got to soak it all in, and realizing like it was this beautiful metaphor, walking through all the darkness to kind of get to the light of the stadium, and walking through it together with my teammates. And I remember like I was walking through that tunnel like really slowly, like with everyone, and I was like just bawling my eyes out, because in that moment, you just realize, holy shit, I did it. I fucking did it. Like, I moved across the world. I gave up everything. I overcame my disbelief. I overcame my doubt. I gave it everything in the pool as often as I could, and I've made it to the Olympics. And then the whole team, one of the guys on the team starts yelling, Aussie, 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 oi, 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 and everyone's just going, Aussie, oi, Aussie, oi, over and over and over again. And we're just chanting like from our like hearts, and I'm just bawling my eyes out, and I just truly felt like, walk through all that darkness and stepped into the light of the stadium. And I honestly felt like in that moment, like I became an Olympian, and it all became worth it. And it was just such like, that is a moment I'm going to hold with me for the rest of my life. And I love sharing that story with other people, because I think as much as like it was my awesome experience of going to the Olympics, happiness is only real when shared. So sharing that story and sharing the story of the Olympics and sharing my journey, that is what really matters, that contribution at the end of the day.
So cool.
Yeah.
Being a former athlete, I could probably ask you thousands of questions about the Olympics and like people you talk to and mindset and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, Carl, do we have 10 more minutes?
Sure. Yeah.
Danielle, do you have 10 more minutes? Okay. Usually at the end of podcasts, I'll ask people to make the final statement, and it's like, whether it's some piece of advice or something that's kind of helped push them along the way or whatever. Mm. But instead, I think we can talk a little bit more about kind of what you're doing now after Olympics. I know you're still training lots. I know you're training for World Championships coming up.
Yeah, that's right.
When's that?
July 2019.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then will you be training for the Olympics 2020?
So this is a decision that I just made recently. So I just went to a training camp in Perth at the beginning of December, and it was kind of the first phase of our Olympic team trials. And it's been a hard process, kind of like post-Olympics is really hard, because you get to a point where your life goes until a certain day, and then nothing happens after that. I literally hadn't thought about what would happen after August 19th, 2016. It was like an abyss. I'm like, holy shit, time keeps going. What do I do now? And so kind of recovering from that and figuring out what was next was really hard. And I went to World Champs in 2017 with my team, and I was kind of, at first I was like, definitely, I'm like, let's do it again, like just like another round of shots, like another Olympics, like let's just go. And then, because you're just on that high, and you just want to feel that again. It's the most euphoric natural high you could ever have, and it's taken me a lot of time. And at first I really wanted to go to Tokyo, and through like a lot of soul searching in the past 2 years, and it was definitely the past 6 months, I kind of realized like that's not the road for me, and it was really hard to figure out, because I think my ego, 100% my ego wanted to go to the Olympics. Like, it is amazing. Those 2 weeks of the Olympics is phenomenal, like and coming away from that, like those feelings are awesome. But my heart, my soul, whatever you want to call it, like that, I just don't want that anymore. And there's so many hours of training that go into it, and it is so hard. And it's not, I think I was scared of walking away, because I was scared of myself thinking I'm just backing down. Like, that constant mental toughness, like I can fucking do it again, like bring it on. But realizing that like I don't truly want that anymore, and that's okay. And it was kind of hard to let go, because I think people in my family and possibly friends kind of wanted that for me, because being the friend of someone who goes to the Olympics is almost better than being the athlete, because all you got to do is party and like have a great time, where like I got to put in the hard yards. So I decided recently, like, it's not for me anymore. Like, I'm happy to walk away, because I think like I have other stuff that excites me and lights me up, and that's a path that I want to go down. And I know I have more to give to this world than being a synchronized swimmer and being an Olympian, as amazing as it is. And I think that's just the starting point. So now I kind of have the freedom and the time to be able to do that, and going, for the mixed duet in the next 9 months or 7 months or so is kind of going to be my like swan song and my final like bowing to the world. I've done it all now, and I'm happy to walk away. And like, I'm proud of myself, and I have nothing left. And, I'm going to watch my teammates walk out there in 2020 and be really proud of them and everything they did. And I'm sure there's going to be a little part of my ego that's like, oh, you could have done that. Like, I could have, but there's more for me, and I have so much thirst for life, and that the constant belief that like there's just so much to do and not enough time, you know, and I'm excited to be able to go about that now. Yeah.
What I want to talk to you about is you getting into public speaking.
Yeah. And
doing a lot of talks with, is it mostly like younger kids?
It's all ages.
Okay.
I like talking to all different ages.
Because that's where I'm finding a lot of value now. Is a lot of young realtors have been reaching out to me asking for coffee, just kind of picking my brain, saying, how do you start? Where do you get clients? A ton of stuff about my experience. And I get a lot of value out of that.
Yeah.
I get, when you're going into these talks with kids or young people, what are you wanting them to take away from your experience?
Yeah. So it's so true. Like you get a lot of value out of sharing with other people, because I think as human beings, ultimately, like when we are doing things for ourselves, it feels good, but when we're doing things out of contribution, it feels better. And I got to a point where it's like, this insane opportunity was so incredible. Like it's selfish if I just keep it to myself. What I've learned is selfish if I don't share it or try and help someone in the process. I go out there and I just talk about the stuff that I've talked here. Like my main message, I think, is I know. My main message is just stepping into that fear and not allowing fear to hold you back. And going after something you're passionate about, because so many people sorry, my dad is behind you waving. Trying to focus. So many people, like, you can see there's light switched off in their eyes, there is so many people that just settle for what is in this life, and they just go through filling their life with other stuff, whether it be materials or other things that make them feel good, because they've given up on their passion because it's too hard, they're too scared, whatever. So going after what you're passionate about, being motivated but being committed to achieving it, and enjoying the journey along the way, and realizing that the true success comes in being present and enjoying the moment, and not after the thing and who you become in the process. That is what matters, because I think, I'm, like I said, a passionate life enthusiast, and I want everyone to do the best that they can in this life, and it's gonna come out of people doing what they're passionate about. We live in a world now where it is so easy. Like, we don't have to worry about, the basic stuff that people had to worry about 150 years ago. Like, we go and buy food at the grocery store. No one has to farm anymore. Like, we can go out there and do what we're passionate about. Like, we have so much information accessible to us at all times. It is possible to go out there and do what you love and make money from it. And through that, we are all going to make this world a better place, whether it be through real estate, whether it be through synchronized swimming, whether it be through speaking or writing a book or social media or whatever it is. There is a spot for you in this world to do your thing, and you're going to thrive at it, and you're going to thrive in this life if you are brave enough to go after it.
Carl, that was pretty good, eh?
Thank you.
I like that. I have a very similar mindset. I'm just not as vocal as you, so I think you're pushing me.
Good.
Yeah.
Speak up. Like, it's scary at first.
I think I'm doing a better job now.
You have a podcast, I don't, so you're winning.
The podcast has been huge for me. Yeah. Not that it's winning. It's more just like, this is a medium where I feel very comfortable. Yeah. In sharing a message, sharing my experience. Yeah. Whereas I don't know if I'd be very comfortable going into a school and talking in front of 5, 6, 7, 8, 1,000 people. I don't know how many people, but this for me is very comfortable, and it can reach a lot of people if you do it correctly. Yeah, totally. And I think that so many people undervalue themselves, like that imposter syndrome, but everyone has a good story. Like, especially if you know how to tell it, everyone's life is fascinating. Everyone has been through some sort of adversity that they have overcome that we can all learn something from. So whether that just be having a conversation and sharing that with a friend, having with a group of friends around a dinner table, through a podcast, public speaking, whatever it is, we all have something to share and learn in this world. And your way of doing it is on a podcast, and my way of doing it is speaking. But
you know, my experience is amazing, but even the average person experience is valuable as well. If you have the enough self-awareness to look at it, understand it, and help people moving forward. Because like I said, if you're doing it for yourself, it feels good. If you're doing it through contribution, it feels better. And that is the point of life. We all want to feel fulfilled, don't we? And it comes honestly, ultimately through contributing.
I love that. Lastly, I have started this thing called the fire round. Have you did you hear it?
No.
It's just like I'll maybe ask you like 6 or 7 questions that are just like really quick answers.
Yep.
Some of them are fun questions. Some of them may be to do with your journey, but they're kind of all over the place.
Okay.
What's your dad's favorite flavor of ice cream?
Oh God. Chocolate mint.
Trick question because he's here.
Okay.
Is that right?
I have lots of favorites.
Just ice cream in general.
Cream.
Yeah.
Broad category. Best part about living in Australia?
Sunshine. 100%. Yeah.
Have you ever fought a kangaroo?
No.
I have.
My dad has, apparently.
Big John has.
I have a picture to prove it.
That was photoshopped.
I'd like to see that photo.
You will, I'll show you.
Okay.
What was the best gift you got for Christmas this year?
Coming home to be with my family.
I was hoping she'd say the puzzle.
Oh yeah, the puzzle. My parents got me a puzzle of themselves. 48 pieces. Woo!
Is that hilarious? Oh my gosh. We didn't get to talk about DK Cooks.
Yeah.
What's your favorite meal to make?
Ooh, I like it just if I have anything in my fridge and I make something out of that, like just the creativity of just being like, oh, I don't know what I have, and then I can usually make something amazing out of it. Yeah. Cool.
What is the biggest misconception about synchronized swimming?
That it's an old lady sport and that it's easy. It is not easy. I challenge everyone to get into a pool, go upside down, and try and get your legs out of the water while pointing your toes and holding your breath for 30 seconds. It's a lot harder than you think.
Have you got your dad to try that?
Yeah, a few times. Not very good at it. He can barely touch his knees, so I don't think he's going to be the next Australian male synchronized swimmer. Sorry, Dad. That's Ethan.
You've got a pretty good inspirational
it's because I was taught from the best. My dad's pretty inspiring. Yeah.
Danielle, thank you so much for coming out. Danielle's only in town for a week, but her social media is awesome. So if you want to know more about her or connect with her, how can they reach you?
Danielle.kw on Instagram. Go and follow me if you want some inspo or some cooking or some hilarious parental things at the moment, because my parents are hilarious.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming out. That was a lot of fun.
Thank you. That was awesome.
It was really nice to catch up too.
Definitely.
Have a good rest of your trip.
Exciting to see where the world takes us both.
100%. I'm excited too.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening, guys. As always, hit me up on Instagram if you have any questions, comments, concerns. Love it. I want to hear them. Denny.Dumas. Later.